Hello children, I'm going to carry on reading our Vanishing Granny book. I'll just remind you of where we got up to. So Joe has gone into the chocolate shop and is looking for the others who've been kidnapped. Now Mrs. Fudge came up to Joe and asked him whether he knew what sort of chocolates he would like to buy. I haven't made my mind up yet, he said. I'd just like to look. Mrs. Fudge smiled. Her manner towards him was quite different from the way she treated the others. Not that Joe was to know that. You take your time, dear, she said, her voice warm and friendly. There's no hurry. Pick something you really like, something mouth-watering perhaps. Joe walked over to one of the counters and started to look at the rows of delicious-looking chocolates. But all the time he was keeping an eye on the door that led to the back of the shop. And when he saw his chance, he made for that. Mrs. Fudge was busy with another customer at the time, so she didn't see him darting behind the counter and slipping through the door. Joe found himself in a large room. Along the walls, there were stacked all sorts of tubs and other equipment that a chocolate factory needs. There was also a lot of brightly coloured wrapping paper, ribbons tied in bows for sticking on tops of boxes of chocolates, and containers of various fillings. Marzipan, nuts, bits of candied orange peel and so on. If he had had the time, it would have been a wonderful place to look about, but Joe had other things to do. At the far end of the room was another door. It was firmly closed, but when Joe went over to it, he found that he was able to push it open without too much effort, and what he saw on the other side made him gasp. There were the dogs, all 10 of them. They were scratching at the bottom of a large locked door. Whatever they could smell on the other side of the door was of great interest to them. Joe decided immediately that this must be where Fern, Billy and Tom were. Crossing the floor of the room, he joined the dogs. Mitzi looked up at him expectantly and then pointed with one of her paws at the locked door. Do you think they're in there? Joe asked. Mitzi barked. That bark meant only one thing, yes. That was the way a dog would say yes. You and I might think it exactly the same sound that a dog would use to say no, but Joe knew better than that. He had trained all these dogs and he knew what they meant when they barked like that. Joe was about to knock on the door and call out to his brother and sister when the door behind him, the one through which he had come, suddenly opened. Spinning round, he saw Mr. and Mrs. Fudge standing there, and they did not look at all pleased. What do you think you're doing, young man? Asked Mr. Fudge. Are you a chocolate thief like those others in there? Joe took a deep breath. He was brave, but the tone of Mr. Fudge's voice was threatening, really rather frightening. I'm looking for my brother and sister, said Joe, his voice sounding very small and weak. Mr. Fudge glanced at Mrs. Fudge and she glanced back at him. Joe could tell they were not pleased. You can join them if you like, said Mr. Fudge, his voice full of menace. Yes, said Mrs. Fudge. There's plenty of room where they are safely locked up. Joe did not know what to do. The Fudges were much bigger than he was, and he did not stand a chance of getting away from them. But then, just as he was beginning to think that he was completely trapped, he saw something that caught his attention. Mr. Fudge was holding a bunch of keys, all tied up with string. One of these must be for the locked door behind him, where the others were being kept. And when he saw that, an idea came into his mind. He was not alone in this dangerous situation. He had with him 10 brave assistants, and there were only 2 Fudges. Joe turned to Mitzi, who was standing close to his feet, growling softly at the Fudges. Oh, there, Mitzi! Joe suddenly shouted, pointing to Mr. Fudge and his bunch of keys. Fetch, Mitzi, fetch! Circus dogs are very highly trained and very bright. Many dogs would not have known what to do, but Mitzi did. Without waiting for a second command, she dashed forward, her hackles raised, and behind her, like soldiers following their leader, went the other 9 dogs, growling and barking and making as much noise as they could. The Fudges froze. It is not easy to run away when you're being encircled by 10 excited and angry dogs. So they were not prepared for what Mixie did next, which was to leap up and snatch the bunch of keys in her jaw. Then, before Mr. Fudge could do anything to stop her, she raced back to Joe and dropped the keys at his feet. It was easy for Joe now, because they were surrounded by the rest of the dogs. The Fudges couldn't do anything to stop Joe finding the right key and opening the door behind him. And then, astonished to find themselves rescued, but very pleased nonetheless, were Fern, Billy and Tom. "It's you!" shouted Fern. "Well done, Joe." "Well done, Mixie," said Joe. "She's the one who deserves the credit." Mixie had more to do. There was another door not far away, and she was scraping at this with her paws. "She's found something," said Fern. Billy went over to the door and tested it. It was not locked, and when he opened it, he caught his breath in surprise over what he saw. There, sitting in front of a large table covered in chocolates, was Tom's granny. She was surprised. "Well, well," she said when she saw her grandson. "What on earth are you doing here, Tom?" "We've come to rescue you, Granny." A look of complete surprise came over Granny's face. "Rescue me? What from?" "From those wicked people there," said Tom. "From the granny nappers." This brought a loud snort from Mr. Fudge. "Granny nappers? Who are you to accuse us of being granny nappers?" Then, turning to point at Fern and Billy, he continued. "Those children are chocolate thieves. We trapped them when they were coming in to steal our chocolate. We were going to call the police to come and collect them." "Chocolate thieves?" cried Billy. "We're not chocolate thieves. We're granny savers." It was obvious there had been a big mistake somewhere, and it was Tom's granny who sorted it out. "Let's all sit down and talk about this," she said. "I think there's been a big misunderstanding." They all sat down and talked, and the story became clear. Tom's granny had not been granny-napped. She was actually very friendly with the Fudges and had asked them to help her with a special plan she'd cooked up. "Your birthday's coming up soon, Tom." Tom nodded. "In 2 days' time, Granny." Tom's granny smiled. "And I know how much you like chocolate. I thought I'd make you a special chocolate cake, the very best chocolate cake ever. It would be made of 100 different kinds of chocolates in the shape of a castle. It would be quite unlike any other chocolate cake in the history of the world." Tom's jaw dropped. "Is that what you've been doing here?" he asked. His granny nodded. "It was to be a surprise, and so I came here to stay with my friends for a few days while I worked on it. They've been helping me." Mrs. Fudge nodded. "I'm so sorry about what happened," she said. "We were trying to keep it a secret, and then we found you inside the workshop because it was dark. We didn't recognise you. We really did think you were chocolate thieves. We're sorry." After this, everyone laughed. It had all been a misunderstanding. Tom's granny was perfectly safe. It was a pity that the birthday cake would no longer be a surprise, but Tom had not seen all that much of it, and so bits of it would be new to him on his birthday. "Did my mum and dad know about this?" asked Tom. "Oh, yes," nodded Granny. "They were in on the secret. I had to tell them." "Then they knew you were safe," said Tom. "Oh, yes, but they couldn't tell you, could they? That would have ruined the surprise." "We owe you an apology," said Mr. Fudge. "Would you accept a tray of chocolates to make up for it?" The children agreed this would more than make up for what happened. "We should say sorry to you too," said Billy. "We thought you were wicked." "Oh, they're not wicked at all," said Tom's granny. "How could anybody who makes such delicious chocolates be wicked?" Tom's granny went home with Tom, while Billy, Fern and Joe went back to the circus with their dogs. There they told their parents and Mr. Birdcage about what happened. He smiled. "You did very well," Mr. Birdcage said. "You found clues and you followed them. It's not your fault you got it all wrong, because you have to get some things wrong before you get them right." Billy thought that was very true. He wrote it in a notebook that he kept to record what Mr. Birdcage taught them. That night, Tom came to the circus, this time with his granny and Mr. and Mrs. Fudge. The Fudges were in a very good mood and brought free chocolate as a gift for all the other members of the circus. That made them very popular indeed. And for the dogs, Tom's granny brought a bag of dog biscuits that she gave to them after the show. The dogs were pleased. They hoped that there would be more detective work for them in the future. 2 days later, Tom had a party to celebrate his birthday. The amazing cake made out of chocolates was on show, and everybody had the chance to see it, photograph it, and then eat a piece. They all agreed there had never been a cake quite like it, although they did hope one day there would be another. And that was the first mystery that the 3 circus detectives solved. There would be more, they hoped, and there were. And that's the end of our book, children.